Good morning. It is Monday, March 23rd, and as promised, I am reading chapter 1 of my first novel, Double Blind. I read from the preface, it's been several months ago, and I had just got around to chapter 1 because I've been doing a lot of live reads from other people's books, things like that. So I upgraded the audio a little bit, and with the lighting concept to it, just went with some fluorescence in the immediate black background. I had been using one of those lighting rings, and for some reason, I couldn't tell you why, which is probably a mistake, but the lighting just never got right. So hopefully this does pretty good. Getting some little glitches, hopefully that ends. But anyway, I think it's the autofocus. But here we go, chapter 1. Oh, actually what happened in my first novel, Double Blind, in the preface is it kind of set the stage where there was a character who, his name was Daviz and Galvan, and he was, kind of a dual role in the military setting. And the the question is, how was the scene overall? How was everything going to play out? I think there was a little bit of a mystique and mystery in that. So in chapter 1, it kind of fast forwards the timeline a little bit, because in the preface, that was during the the very first Gulf War, which would have been like 1991, 92, that era. And this fast forwards to the year 2023, which is already behind us. And several years behind the conclusion to Double Blind, which comes out later this year, the series anyway. So, Chapter 1. Digital Energy and Quantifiable Science Laboratory, also known as DEX, located in an undisclosed suburb of Albuquerque, New Mexico. February 4th, 2023. Sandra stared blankly at a datasheet atop the laboratory desk in the Bio-Level 1 section of the lab. She wanted to make sense of what she saw, but several hours had passed, and she was no closer to finding the gaps her group was searching for. After spending several weeks studying the data, she felt there might actually be some regression in their conclusions. She looked up from the desk and through a large window separating the office from a central lab. Private Thomas Henry lay atop a stainless steel table, resting from the latest treatment they'd administered a few hours earlier. "Why are you getting these headaches, Henry?" she asked herself. Sandra turned back to the datasheet and began sifting through the open file folder nearby, wondering if there was even a little more data she hadn't noticed. Over the past several weeks, she and several other lab techs noticed two surprising trends in Henry's development. His body was beginning to change in ways that weren't easily explained. His muscles were increasing in size and strength. He was also getting headaches and experiencing a temporary loss of cognitive function. It was hindering progress as he recovered from treatments. None of the scientists assigned to the project could explain what was happening. There would be brief periods where it looked like the situation was improving, and then it would backslide. Sandra set up several rows of petri dishes, each containing different solutions needed to assign protein strains to individual factors of the experiment. These solutions would help determine what was triggering specific changes and what motivated protein bonds. Over the past several weeks, the peculiar changes seemed to be the product of unknown and undetermined elements. They'd been conducting a slew of tests, including physical testing, data collection, and sample testing, but nothing seemed to yield a solution. She clicked her tablet on and began another set of audio notes. "These samples are going to help determine the direction we'll be taking next," Sandra said as the application recorded. "Because it hasn't made much of a difference as of yet, I'm giving the potential for success a very low likelihood, bordering on total failure." She paused. "I hope we can figure out why the changes are happening and why the headaches are ever present. Something has to give." Sandra looked up from the desk and through the window into the room where the private had been laying. She suddenly didn't see him on the steel table. There was a brief moment of confusion as she stood. "Do you need food, Henry?" Sandra said aloud. There was a chance his energy levels were running low. She moved away from the table and walked to the glass separating the two rooms. There was no sight of him anywhere near the table, which was odd as all of his sensors were in their usual places in the room. It was strange. Everything had been disconnected. Sandra walked to the lab door and entered her code to access the other room. She reached for the handle as the intercom buzzed, scaring the hell out of her. She looked up at the monitor. It was Dr. Marcia Benedict, one of her colleagues. She cursed as she hated being startled, so she walked to the intercom and clicked the answer button. "You scared me half to death," Sandra said. "I'm sorry," Marcia replied. "I wasn't coming to the office today, but wanted to ask how things are going. Did you set up the control group?" "I did," Sandra said. "There are 4 sets of parameters just as we discussed yesterday. I doubt we'll see any difference. We're optimistic, but still." "Yeah, that's been the consensus. Have you talked to anyone this morning?" Sandra replied. I'm the only one here, other than security. That guy. Marcia didn't sound excited. Well, do me a favor and touch base with me in an hour. I'm curious how the protein chains respond. I can do that, Sandra paused. You said you were not coming in today? No, I took a day off. I will be back tomorrow. Oh, okay. I wanted to chat with you about Ben. We haven't talked about things in a while. What's to say? Marcia responded. Oh, well, that speaks volumes. There's so much going on, and it leaves little for an update. But we could touch base in an hour. Talk about anything you want. Okay, good to hear from you. Maybe we can go for a margarita soon? Absolutely. We will reconnect later, Marcia said as she ended the call, causing a click sound to reverberate through the lab as Sandra walked away from the intercom. She returned to the divider door, entered her passcode again, and opened the door. As she entered, she didn't announce herself, looking for signs of Private Henry. He wasn't anywhere she could see. Sandra took a few small steps toward the steel table, listening closely for anything that might sound like movement. She was met with silence. Sandra made her way to the side of the table. Leaning forward, she looked underneath. She knelt down, looking beneath the supply drawer just below the table, wondering if he had decided to hide for some reason. Sometimes, she thought, disoriented medical patients could do odd things. Sandra saw nothing as she leaned further and knelt on both knees, placing her hands on the cold floor. There was a sudden and searing pain that started at the base of her spine. As Sandra tried to yell, the pain was so intense her voice was silenced before it could leave her throat. She heard a deafening sound of a crunch, bone grinding on bone as the room felt like it was spinning. She could feel herself losing consciousness. Scary, right? Need some coffee. I just need some coffee. So I really prefer stories that have kind of a more powerful beginning, if you will. So hopefully the margarita talk didn't slow things down. Somewhere in South America, 4 hours later, Sam reached for the AR-15 slung across his muscled left shoulder, setting it down alongside his waist as he gazed towards the convoy of 3 large, older cargo trucks. Sweat dripping from his short dark hair onto the camouflage face paint quickly ran toward his thin shirt. Jungle noises began to quiet as he sat on his perch in the trees. The monkeys had stopped their calls, and the birds were no longer chirping. A gentle breeze continued over the top of the canopy alongside the winding dirt road. The convoy was quickly approaching. He was several meters behind the road, embedded amongst the trees, further hidden by the thick brush that threatened to swallow everything nearby. He gently reached for the weapon hammer and loaded a bullet into the chamber, keeping the fire setting on a single shot. Sam took a deep breath and reached for a remote detonator in his camouflage trouser pocket, clicking the safe off as he heard the truck motors. Sam exhaled as the first truck emerged from beyond the tree line. He clicked the fire button, and a claymore mine exploded into the truck, crushing the passenger side as the blast toppled it over. He clicked the second fire button, and a cache of C4 plastic explosives buried in the road exploded into a massive fireball enveloping the second truck. Sam clicked the final fire button as he leaped down from the branch and hurried toward the first vehicle. A third explosion shattered a massive branch from a tree alongside the third truck, sending the tree limb onto the cargo bay. Sam hurried to the cab of the first truck, confirming that the driver and passenger had succumbed to the claymore as he hustled to the rear. He fired 4 times, rapidly taking out the remainder of the soldiers, and hurried to the second truck. He made quick work of the men in the second truck, using debris as cover while the cartel soldiers made weak attempts to fight back. Sam unloaded 2 shots into the driver of the third truck. The passenger was raising an AK-47. Sam shot him twice. The soldier fell and began that terrible guppy breathing, indicating death was inevitable. Sam dispatched him with a merciful shot to the head. He removed a percussion grenade from his trouser pocket, pulled the pin, and tossed it into what was left of the truck's cargo hold. Sam wrenched the broken driver door open and covered himself. The grenade exploded, disabling 4 men as they fell from the truck. Sam shot the first 3, quickly moving closer to his primary target. 2 days of stalking the jungle would end quickly. Sam looked down at the man, groaning as he rolled onto his back. A positive identification of the most elusive drug lord in the southern hemisphere was easy. Excuse me. The challenging part would be getting the man through the jungle and downriver before the second convoy caught up. Sam looked toward the compound, barely visible through the thick jungle. He could see a faint cloud of dust as the second round of trucks made it to the road. Sam quickly removed all the weapons from the man, a sidearm and 2 knives. He picked up the man, tossing him over his broad shoulder, and began walking into the jungle. He broke into a trot as he watched the second half of the convoy closing in. Sam hurried into a run, listening to the groans as the target's injured body was jostled atop Sam's shoulder. Tongue twister. The jungle seemed to give way while Sam increased his pace, covering more than a mile downhill, hurrying to the river. Sam spotted the river bank, sprinting to the cove where he tied up the small camouflage raft at the water's edge. He tossed the drug lord into the raft, quickly tying up the man's wrists and ankles and placing a piece of gorilla tape across his mouth. He was coming to, and Sam didn't want any opportunity for problems. The man looked at Sam with worried and yet menacing eyes. Sam looked back, smiled from the corner of his mouth, and shoved him back into the side of the raft, splashing river water onto the man's head. Sam climbed into the raft, kicking away from the shoreline and propelling the craft into the river. He grabbed an oar and began paddling downstream for several minutes before he turned the powerful, noisy outboard motor on. The enormous aircraft was ready for takeoff, four massive Rolls-Royce C-130 engines idling loudly as Sam emerged from the jungle, running toward the tarmac near the single runway. 30 United States soldiers were near the plane, all watching as Sam carried one of the most wanted men in the world atop his shoulder. The older, white-haired commanding officer took a few steps to greet him with a nod. Sam dropped the drug lord at the commander's feet. They both found it satisfying to hear him grunt as he hit the ground. "Mr. Yuling," the commanding officer began, "on behalf of the United States military." Sam looked up at him, interrupting as his intense eyes met the officer's gaze. "It was the second convoy that left the compound shortly after the first," Sam said. "Yes," the CO replied. "Our Predator drone caught them on scope. Have you?" "I'm planning on continuing down the river to the native airport," Sam finished. "My flight leaves in a few hours." "You're more than welcome to catch a ride with us." Sam saluted and began making his way from the officer. "Mr. Yuling," the CO said, "I urge you to reconsider." Sam's phone vibrated in his trouser pocket. He quickly reached for it and answered, foregoing any greeting. "I take it you're not getting our ride home on the C-130, the male voice on the other end of the line asked. "No," Sam replied. "I received your file and will return to New Mexico to meet up at the lab." "Sam, thank you for avoiding a ride back with them. Undoubtedly, they would have requested your involvement in the next operation. I know old Jonesy would have wanted your help on this next mission and would have offered good money." "I'm asking for 20% more, up front." There was an immediate response. "You can name your price on this operation." "Sam, it could take a week, maybe more." Sam hurried to the raft, which was still on the shoreline. "Every post gets a maximum of 3 days before I'm gone. Nothing new." "Of course." Sam untied the raft and quickly started the outboard engine. "I'll be there in a few days." He hung up. And that's chapter 1. Ooh, ominous, right? Well, hopefully it's a good starter. Hopefully it sounds intriguing. We'll do chapter 2, not too far from right now, but somewhere in the very near future. For everyone that's made it this far, I thank you very much. Hopefully, if you're interested, get a copy of Double Blind. It's available on Kindle Unlimited. You get print or ebook. All that's available. Currently, you have Double Blind, and then you have the follow-up, which is Something Wild. And it kind of follows up, I think, a year after the conclusion of Double Blind. The Double Blind timeline is pretty quick. It's only a few days, so it makes it kind of a fun, rip-roaring, fast little read. So I thank you for joining me. And if there's any questions, comments, just leave them below in the comments section.